Kurt, the third blown double-digit fourth-quarter lead of the season for the Chicago Bears. Good sir. How do you respond to something like that as a player?
Obviously, it's frustrating when you have a lead going into the fourth quarter like they did, and you blow it. I think the biggest thing is just the offense didn't really give them anything really for most of the day, and I think that's the most frustrating part, especially if I'm a player. We can look at the defense and go, well, you blew we had, a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter and you guys blew it. But, to me, it was just the offense gave them nothing. The defense set them up with the pick six and obviously the other interception inside the 10-yard line. And the offense was really non-existent for most of the day. And that, to me, would be the most frustrating part, is that we had a chance not only to just win that game, but if we do anything offensively, we put that game away and we don't give we don't give Cleveland a chance to come back in the game. But that was, to me, the most frustrating part of the game, is what they did offensively, what they were doing, what the plan was, on top of the fact that they struggled to block Cleveland's front all day long. It was a frustrating watch from a Chicago offensive standpoint.
This was the best test they had probably the rest of the way. We've been looking forward to it all week and kind of building it up. And that Browns defense, you saw it and you just discussed it. The offense failed the test. And the question is, how much of it is on Justin Fields? So you can take that any way you want. You can talk about Getty and the scheme. You can talk about the blocking. You help us figure out what we're trying to figure out, how much of it is on Justin Fields.
I don't think very much of this was on Justin Fields, in my opinion. As I said, they struggled to block them up front, and so it starts there. And so, to me, when you struggle with that, there's always two approaches. A lot of people will say, well, if you're struggling to block them up front, then leave more guys in to block, and then it just automatically you feel like, oh, well, if we have 7 guys blocking, then they shouldn't be able to get pressure on the quarterback. I look at it completely differently, because sometimes you leave 7 guys in the block, and now that means a tight end is blocking a defensive end. Even though you got extra guys in there, it gives you bad matchups. I think other times it's like, we could still have 7 guys in the block, but if somebody in the interior is one-on-one and gets beat, it doesn't matter how many guys are in there, because you're not getting help with those guys anyways. And so they seem to be trying to block them up by adding extra guys. And then the other thing that does is that leaves 2, maybe 3 guys in a route, and it makes it easier on the defensive backs to cover that up. So now you're holding the football longer, even though in theory, back to what I originally said, in theory, it sounds really good. Extra guys in the block will have more time and we'll be able to throw it down the field. I oftentimes, when we can't block a team, said, give me 5 guys out, get them out as fast as you can, and give me a chance to see what the defense is doing and get the ball out of my hands. And this game, they didn't really have a lot of underneath pass concepts to get the ball out of Justin's hands. And so it was a lot of holding it, trying to get down the field. And then I think the other thing that you see is, outside of DJ Moore, Cleveland said, we're gonna press them. We're gonna get up in their face and we're gonna force them to beat us in one-on-one situations. And they couldn't do that. And offensively, they didn't create some easy opportunities or formation and motion, Cleveland, to try to get some off coverage and create easy opportunities for Justin and the wide receivers either. So I was frustrated watching, just the plan going in, just what they thought they had to do to beat this team. It just didn't play out, didn't work very well. And it was frustrating because, again, it was another defensive performance that should have been a winning performance. But when you put that much pressure on a defense for the entirety of a game, eventually, good teams are going to make some plays and make it tough to win that game. And that's exactly what Joe Flacco and company did.
Why would Luke Getsy put in that type of game plan?
Well, again, I understand the theory because that's what a lot of people will say. Well, you can't block them. We'll leave extra guys in. But to me, it comes down to how you leave those extra guys in and chipping and helping, as opposed to leaving them in a heavy, tight protection where you can also be exposed. And so I understand the theory is, hey, I don't think we can block their front because their front's really good. How are we going to do that? Because the other thing too, and we've talked about it for weeks, I don't necessarily think Justin Fields' strength is five guys out,
Exactly.
make quick decisions and throw the football. So that's not playing to his strengths and their offensive strength either. I think the problem just is, okay, we got to figure out some sort of balance to get something going for us offensively, because there really wasn't anything going, most of the day. The best play they had was obviously the drop, by the big fella on the naked bootleg, where, you don't normally throw that kind of deep post play on a naked. It just happened that Justin got out and was able to buy a little bit of time and put that out there. And unfortunately, that didn't work out for him. But again, I understand the theory behind the game plan. Just to me, it's not always the best theory, especially when you got guys on the outside that can't necessarily win those one-on-one battles, when you're talking about a really good secondary and really good corners that are going to challenge you.
Justin said after the game that there were times he had receivers downfield. He was trying to anticipate where they were, but he could not see them given the pressure. And he said it's hard to complete the ball when you're just guessing. Like he had known that his guys beat them off the line bad, but it's hard to complete the ball when you're just guessing. What's your reaction to hearing him say that, knowing the game you watched?
Well, I understand it. When you get quick pressure and guys are in your face and you don't get a chance to be able to find windows or see over the top of them or whatever, it is hard. And so, nobody likes to fully anticipate. And what I mean by that is, anticipation is one thing where you see your guy and you feel the hole and you throw it to the hole. It's another thing when you're saying, okay, I don't really see it, but I can go back on muscle memory and just take this quick hitch and throw it to a spot. That's a tough thing to do, for just about any quarterback. But that's tough, and I definitely see it, and that's definitely an issue that Cleveland and specifically Myles Garrett gives quarterbacks every week, is quick pressure, guy in your face, and you can't really see and see how things are developing behind it, and you've got to make a decision on, all right, do I try to run away from him? Do I try to anticipate and hope my guys are in the right spot with the right timing? And it's just, as we all, it's not a good place to play. It's not a good position to be in as a quarterback. And, it's tough to play football that way.
So when you see that game plan and the lack of the short stuff underneath, and it goes along with what you watched yourself in Minnesota with all the wide receiver screens, you have Luke Getsy questions at this point?
I think the bottom line always in every game is, I'm always going to have questions when they don't have success offensively. But the thing you also have to realize is that, I felt like when I played that I could play in whatever manner we needed to play. So if we needed to block it up and run play action, I felt like I could find ways to be successful that way. If we had to get five guys out, I felt like we could have success that way, And so for me, as a guy that feels like I could play a lot of different ways, it's easy for me to look at any game plan and go, well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? When you're talking about a more limited and I should add the other pieces, I had weapons on the outside in most situations I was in where I felt like those guys could win in one-on-one situations as well. And so when you feel like you have an offense that can do anything, it's easy to look at, the tape and go, well, I would have done this and I would have done that. When you don't have that, whether it's skill players, whether it's your quarterback strengths, whether it's your offensive line strength, whatever it is, you still have those questions, but you also understand, due to limitations, each and every coordinator has to try to figure out, in this situation with our personnel, what can we do to be successful? And there's going to be times where it doesn't work, even though it sounds really good on paper and you think it's going to play out really well on Sundays. It doesn't really work. And, and anytime that happens, you're always going to have questions about, why and could you have done something different? But, but that's their job. Their job is to try to come up with the best plan with our guys against the guys we're playing against. And, not every team has the ability to do anything and everything that you might want to do against an opponent.
I got two more things that I want to talk to you about here as we're talking to Kurt Warner, voice of Monday Night Football on Westwood One. On the Hail Mary at the end of the first half, Justin Fields was hit late, and there was no call. And Jaquan Brisker 2 weeks ago was saying, hey, they're never, if we hit a quarterback like our guy gets hit, there'd be flags. And Matt Eberflus says that he talks to the refs before the games on the field. I've been calling for him to kind of try to go off and get fined for calling off the refs, maybe in a press conference so that it would go viral on NFL Network and be talked about. What should be done in terms of politicking by Fields, Eberflus, Getsy, or anybody to try to get Justin Fields some flags here, Kurt?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to believe that he's not getting them, because I see him all over the league where I'm even rolling my eyes like, oh my gosh,
I've heard you. You think it's called too liberally, and for Fields, it's never getting called at all.
Yeah, I mean, I do, and you start to see quarterbacks that are just lobbying for it, where it's just like, dude, just get up and go play. Like, okay, you held your slide a little bit too long, and a guy came in and hit you. Nobody likes it, but it's gotten to the point where everybody is lobbying for it. And I just think it's called too liberally, but at the same time, you want the plays that should be penalties to be called, even, if you don't like it, but by the letter of the law, it's a penalty. They should be called. And so, I'm just kind of surprised that there is, or at least it feels like there may be a little bit of a difference between a guy like Justin and some of the calls he's not getting, and so many calls that I see around the league. I wouldn't think you'd have to politic for it, because they're doing, they're going above and beyond to protect the quarterback. But I mean, I don't think it can ever hurt to say something here or there, and put it in the officials' minds. I mean, we used to always do that going into the game. If we thought a team held a lot, or if we thought a certain defensive end liked to try to get a jump, and there was times they were offsides, we're always going up to the officials beforehand. Hey, keep an eye on 21, or keep an eye on so-and-so, we've noticed blah, blah, blah. And you just want to put it in their mind. So when those things come up, that maybe they think back to that conversation and they throw the flag.
And then since we last talked to you, and I know you haven't done the full scouting on the draft picks, but Charles Robinson reported that he talked to 7 current NFL general managers, and all 7 of them said that they would trade Justin Fields and draft Caleb Williams. There's 3 games left. With that as the backdrop, do you have a best guess as to how this is going to play out here, big picture?
I can obviously only speculate, but I kind of see it playing out that way as well. I think these last 3 games can go a long way for Coach and for Justin, and maybe to say, hey, we need another go at this thing. But I could see them saying, okay, this hasn't played out like we wanted to. We haven't seen the growth that we want to. So I could see them saying, hey, let's go with the new coach and let them get their quarterback, and let's bind them together. And then, see if we can build it from there. I could definitely see that scenario playing out. Otherwise, I could see the scenario playing out where, hey, we've seen enough down the stretch because Chicago defense has played better. Justin, I think, has played better and given them a chance to win these last few weeks, where I could see them saying, okay, we see the trajectory going up. Let's keep these guys together for another year and see how it plays out. I think the hardest part is always you have no idea where you're going to stack up a year from now when it comes to draft picks. And that could go a long way in determining what they decide to do. If they're sitting there and they've got that number 1 pick, it's hard to just go, let's pass on what may be, another special quarterback, and let's wait until next year, because you have no idea where you're going to sit next year. And so I think that could loom large in, them having to kind of rethink their situation and what that looks like if they sit in that spot.
It's amazing, Kurt, as we're looking around this league. Baker Mayfield with a perfect game yesterday, like
Joe Flacco, 212 yards in the fourth quarter.
2 straight games with 300 yards and multiple touchdowns for Joe Flacco. It's like it feels like I mean, we both agree with you that that's probably the way it's going to go. And I think that Justin has not quite developed enough that you'd want, though I thoroughly admit that Getsy's an issue and the way it's been handled and the growth, all of it is an issue. So maybe there's just no way to avoid it, that when Justin goes away, the narrative and the storyline and people are going to say and feel, man, Justin just didn't have enough time, just ran out of time. You know, is that the way it often ends?
Well, I think, I don't know if a lot of people say that. Unfortunately, I think, too often when it doesn't work out, they want to label the player more than they want to label the situation. I think the same thing very easily could happen with Zach Wilson in New York, that he's got chances to play and it's never come together, although the situation's been kind of a mess and they've had different coaches and different schemes. And I'm not sure he was ready when he got there. Like, he was a project when he got there. I think some people said that same thing about Justin. It was going to take some time to develop him into that complete quarterback. And so I definitely think that there are situations that are better for a guy to grow into becoming that guy. I mean, I've used examples in the past. Tom Brady. Tom Brady wasn't the Tom Brady we know now the first 3 or 4 years of his career. He wasn't. He benefited from a great situation. They won a Super Bowl against us, and he threw for 150 yards. I think he had one touchdown pass in the entirety of the playoffs that year. And so he wasn't that guy, but he was able to buy some time because the team was so good, and he did enough that eventually, as more and more got stacked on him, he was more and more ready to carry a team. Ben Roethlisberger, another guy, benefited from a great run game and a great defense, and they had success while those guys were learning how to play and becoming NFL quarterbacks. And unfortunately, there's a lot of situations where that guy doesn't get the benefit of all that stuff around them, and they have to carry a team and they have to learn how to play. And so ultimately we just say, they were a bust, or they didn't live up to the hype, when in actuality, they might just need more time in a better situation to be able to grow into what maybe they can become long-term. I mean, look at Drew Brees. I mean, Drew Brees, let's look at Justin's situation. Drew Brees was drafted high by the Chargers. And whatever it was, 3 years in, they went and drafted Phillip Rivers, got Phillip Rivers and sent Drew Brees on his way. And he becomes one of the greatest passers the league has ever seen. And so those things happen where guys develop a little bit later or need to be in the right situation to succeed. And it's just unfortunate that some guys don't ever get that time with their original team. And you hope that they can find another situation where we can get to see what their full potential is as they grow. And how about Geno Smith? Again, thinking about the game tonight. What about Geno Smith?
Yep.
Drafted high, right? A lot of people say he was the best quarterback in that draft, and it didn't play out that way early in his career. And it wasn't until way later, and now he signs this huge deal and becomes the franchise quarterback of Seattle. But it took him more time to mature and become that kind of guy. And so those situations are out there. We've seen them happen numerous times. The question really becomes, is there another situation out there that they go to that is a better situation and allows them to grow into, what they can become if they've got the potential to be a really good quarterback, while a lot of guys go to another bad situation and they don't play well there either, or they don't get a chance to grow, then they disappear. I think there's situations on both sides that we've seen throughout the league over the last couple decades.
Yeah, and I know you know this and you've got to go and you're calling the game tonight, but I wonder about Geno. Was it always there? If Eli would have gotten hurt, would he have done this for the Giants? If Rivers would have gotten hurt, would he have done it for the Chargers? If Russell Wilson would have gotten hurt, would he have done it in 2019 for the Seahawks? He just happened to be a backup behind guys where he never got a chance to play, and then he got a chance to play and he was awesome. Yeah,
but he did get a chance to play early, and he didn't seem to be
early.
This guy. Yeah, so he didn't seem to be this guy. But you're exactly right. When did this transpire? When did he
it might have been 5 years ago.
Mature and develop and start to understand what he needed to do and what he needed to be and how he needed to prepare and all of that stuff that goes into being a pro? You're exactly right. It could have been 5 years ago. We just didn't get to see it. I mean, you think back to New York is actually, Eli Manning was benched for Geno Smith. So obviously the Giants had seen something
right
that would make you go, okay, if we're going to move on from Eli Manning, I mean, this guy that's iconic in our organization, we're going to move on from him after all these starts. You better have a pretty good idea that the guy coming in has a chance to be a good quarterback and probably has a chance to take over the New York Giants moving forward if you're going to make that move. And so, yeah, very easily could have seen it then. It just didn't, again, transpire because of the situation around him. And then he gets in a better situation in Seattle, and he's had great success.